Hello Sioux Falls and welcome to Planning Preview for the month of May. My name is Jason Bieber with the Planning Office at the City of Sioux Falls, and joining me today I have a special guest because Carla is unable to be here today, so we've got an amazing step-in, Kristen Benidt with the Planning Department. Thank you so much for filling in for us today.
You're welcome, Jason. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, and you know just as much about this stuff as anybody else, so this is going to be great to be able to go through that. So we've got quite a bit of items, so maybe let's just get right into them, and I'll just start with the first one, okay?
Okay.
So it looks like we've got some commercial property. It's going to RA2 apartment residential moderate density district. We have an address of 1525 West Burnside Street, but this is kind of just south of the Denny Sanford Premier Center, correct?
Yep, south of the Denny Sanford Premier Center between West and Western Avenues.
And then what are they looking to build there?
They're looking to build about 27 or so efficiency apartments, all in one level, with parking and of course laundry facilities on site as well.
That's great. And then this will be kind of another reuse of a parcel. I think there's an existing commercial building there, right? That's
correct. There's like a storage garage there right now, and so this would be a really effective reuse of the site.
Great. That's awesome. Let's get into the next one. This looks like we've got a single family going to twin home duplex residential. It's at 1207 East 21st Street. So is this one of those properties that has kind of been a duplex for a while, or are they actually converting it?
So this is actually a full well, not really conversion. It's a tear down and rebuild.
Oh, great.
Yep.
Great.
So there was a house there that was in pretty rough shape. So that has actually already come down and the site's all graded out. And so the new owner is wanting to put a duplex or twin home on this property, again, to get that higher density. It's pretty close to Cliff Avenue and pretty close to Avera Medical Center. So it's a really great place for a little more density.
Yeah, that would be hopefully one of those things that maybe like traveling nurses or people can go in there. So that's great.
Absolutely.
That's great that we're getting kind of a older house that needs to go down and get some additional density. So that's awesome. That's a good one. And then we've got kind of another one that we see quite a bit. This is our partners over at CCOG, Lynn Keller Forbes. She's looking to take a parcel that's zoned RD1, twin home, duplex residential, and zone it to RT1, which is kind of our single family traditional, right?
Yes, so this is looking to go to a traditional district. It's well within a neighborhood that would be considered a core neighborhood, so that traditional zoning is appropriate. This is actually a lot that is two lots combined together, which is why it can work with that RD1 right now. However, with the two single family homes, the lots are just going to be narrower than 50 feet. So that's why we do need to go to this RT1 to get those traditional lot widths. Yeah,
that's great that we have that option in a zoning district. So it's great. And then we've got a couple of conditional use permits here that we'll have. This one is to allow on-sale alcoholic beverage establishment within 500 feet of a sensitive land use. So this is at 1118 South Minnesota, so about 20th in Minnesota.
Correct.
And I think it butts right up to kind of single family on the east side of it, correct?
It does. Its backyard is single family residential. It's also a historic district back there. So this is an existing business. He's just kind of wanting to expand to try to provide a few more services to his clientele.
Yeah, and this is great that with residential so close that we can have that public hearing in front of the Planning Commission and see what concerns we have from the neighbors, and then see if this is maybe an appropriate spot for on-sale alcohol.
Absolutely. This is going to be one that's going to be really good to discuss.
Great. So it looks like the next about three that we have here are conditional use permits for off-premise signs. Looks like the first one here is at 2010 South Minnesota Avenue, so 29th in Minnesota, somewhere in that range. Yep. And it looks like what they're trying to do is actually do an electronic message center on this, and it's a non-conforming sign. So tell us a little bit about why do they have to go through the process when they're not making it any bigger or not?
Okay, so a few years ago, one of our council members put through an amendment that actually is requiring with the refacing of the signs, they're still allowed to be there, they're still allowed to be non-conforming, but with that switching out from the static, what we call static, to a digital sign, that is what's triggering the conditional use permit.
Yeah, and I think that was a great thing that council member put in there, just to be able to give some of the neighbors an idea, like it's a little different to go to digital. They're not that bright, but just be able to, hey, we're looking to do this. If you have concerns about it, come to the planning commission or let the planning office know. And I believe they are having an actual neighborhood meeting before the planning commission meeting. So.
Correct, yes, they are.
Yep, so that's great. The next two are exactly kind of the same thing, but in different areas, so maybe not really any concerns probably from neighbors. We have there two, they're on the kind of the I-90, I-29 corridor, and they're looking to do the same thing, correct?
Right, yep, it's the same type of request to go from that static to the digital, but again, like you said, location really matters with these. So these are out by the interstate, you're talking high speeds, you're talking high traffic, so the bigger the digital, it's not necessarily it doesn't have as high a potential impact.
Yeah, yep, I agree. And then our final one we got here is a preliminary subdivision plan for Fossfield Second Edition. So this is actually the subdivision out on Veterans and Arrowhead, just north of Menards, correct?
Correct, yep. Just north of Menards. This site is already zoned to C4, so it's already zoned for commercial. However, there's a difference in the layout of the streets, and that's what's triggering the need for a subdivision plan amendment. And
this is, to me, is exciting because it means we're getting ready to hopefully start development north of Menards and then get Highline actually to go through to 6th Street that was just constructed over to Veterans. So.
Right, and that's going to be really exciting to have that all constructed through there. It's going through the commercial area and going to be a really good collector street getting through that area.
Yeah, it's going to be a great addition out there. So that's it. That's what we got for today. So thanks so much for filling in and joining us today, Kristen.
You're welcome, Jason.
And stay tuned, Sioux Falls. After the break, we're lucky enough to have Ryan Johnson, who's with our Public Works team, to talk about SCCs, or system capacity charges. So stay tuned.
Hi, my name is Brent and I'm a housing specialist with the City of Sioux Falls, and I'm here with Kelly, who is the property maintenance manager for code enforcement here in Sioux Falls. Kelly, we're looking at this window in the background here, and this family has decided to put in an egress window and finish a bedroom down here. Do they really need this type of a window?
Yes, absolutely. If you're going to have a habitable sleeping space in the basement, you need to have an egress window. It's got to be a 5 square foot opening. And that's for your safety in case of a fire or emergency. You need to get out, you can get out, or firemen or rescue personnel can get in to get you.
I see they have a metal window well and then a cover on that. Should they have a cover that's fastened down on an egress window?
No, the cover cannot be fastened down. You can have the cover, just not fastened down, something that's easily openable. And if it's more than 4 feet tall, it needs to have a ladder so somebody can climb out.
Right. If they didn't want metal, could they have a wood one or made out of rocks?
Yep, you could have a wood or a block egress window. I mean, the well is just to keep the dirt away and give you the area to get out of the window.
Thank you, Kelly. Well, if you're planning on having habitable space down in your basement and to keep your family safe, be sure to install a new egress window.
If you'd like to see if one of our city programs can help you out, call 367-8180 or check us out online at siouxfalls.org.
Welcome back to Planning Preview for the month of May. Joining me now is Ryan Johnson, the Utility Administrator for our Public Works Department. Thanks for being on the show. We're glad to have you.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me.
Yeah, so this is your first time on the show, so
Yes.
I wanted to have you on here because I think it's really important for our people that watch this to talk about a new cost recovery thing that you're doing for our wastewater that just got approved through council, I think, 6 weeks, 2 months ago?
April
somewhere in that.
1st was the
Okay, great.
the second reading, yep.
Yeah, so great. So tell us a little bit. It's called SCCs, or system capacity charges. So that's what we're calling our new way to essentially get fees to pay for our sanitary sewer system, correct?
Yeah, right, and so it's a system capacity charge, an SCC. And so a lot of different areas use different vernacular for it. Some call it a system development charge, some call it an impact fee.
Yeah.
And so really it's designed to recapture the cost of expanding the wastewater infrastructure.
So before April 1st, we had, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, we called it cost recoveries, where the city would essentially front the cost for the sanitary sewer system, and then a developer would come in and pay a charge based on acreage and based on how much it costs us to put that in. Is that correct?
Yeah, you're exactly right. And so it was a cost recovery fee system. And that's something that dates back into the late 80s, early 90s. And we have over 30 of them throughout the city of Sioux Falls in different location and in different amounts. It's been a great system that we've used for several decades. And like you mentioned, it's really based on acres. And so if you have 5,000 acres per se, and it's $5 million to put the infrastructure to serve that area in, you would say it's $1,000 per acre. 5 million divided by 5,000 is $1,000 per acre to serve that. And so whenever a property would come in to connect to the sanitary sewer system, we would say, sir, to make your, or sir, ma'am, to make that system whole or the ratepayers whole, you would pay $1,000 per acre. If it was 2 acres, it'd be $2,000. If it was half an acre, $2,500 or $500 an acre, or $500.
And it didn't, and one thing I think that maybe this system is better, we'll get a little bit into that, but it was based on, back then, you paid the same if you were a huge cheese plant or a single family house, right? Everybody paid kind of the same amount based on acreage, correct?
That's exactly right. And so we have areas that have a lot of flow coming from in a very small area. They would pay $5,000 an acre and use a lot of that sanitary sewer capacity. On the other side, we'd have large tracts of land, larger tracts of land that would use very little sanitary sewer service, and so they would pay much more on a usage basis just for that initial buy-in of that capacity. And so there was a fairness piece there that really needed to be looked at.
And that kind of gets us in maybe to what you can talk a little bit about. Like you said, we've used the cost recovery system for 30, 35 years, and well, that's how we've always done it. So what made you decide, I know you guys, it's not like you decided this overnight, you've been working on it for years to kind of make the change. So what made you decide to go to the new SCC model, and what do you think is better than the old way that we're doing things?
So there are a handful of drivers. I'll try to unpack them. The 4 of them primarily is the why now. We're growing into all sides of the city, and we're growing into those incrementally rather than all at once. So the cost recovery system worked really well, where you really knew the area and you really had all that construction cost determined. And so you could have a pretty darn solid number for that cost recovery amount. Now we're growing into all sides of the city, and we're going to be building into those areas over the next 50 to 100 years. And so it's completely impractical to estimate those costs and those cost recovery amounts. And so we really needed a new model to transition as we are starting to grow into these areas currently. The other one was to really stabilize our customer rates. And so we need to make sure we have a system that really manages and stabilizes customer rates in the long term. And so rather than, if we were to continue down our current path, customers would be paying for growth and development at some level. And so we wanted to stabilize customer rates. We also wanted to scale for growth. And so having this system really helps us pay for and scale for growth. And so that growth will pay for the growth that it's asking to get for. And then we really wanted a simple, consistent system that we didn't have 30 different cost recoveries in different areas. And so we wanted something that was very predictable for the development community too. And it also, to address that last comment we had, a growth pay for growth. And that you would be based on the actual service that you really were asking for. And that's just to pay for the capital cost of that.
So this model, the SCC model, is this something you guys came up with, or is this other municipalities using it, or?
So we went out for RFPs and asked them to take a look at our financial model. We selected a consultant that has an office in Sioux Falls but does this type of work nationally. And we said, really, we need to, here's our current systems. What are the opportunities out there, and what system do you recommend? They researched it and came back with the system capacity charge and its system development charge. And it's a methodology that is very common throughout this industry. Coast to coast it's being used. And we even have some local communities such as T and Brandon who are currently using this system. And so it's really starting to see a lot more activity in the Midwest that use this system. So very common. The really neat thing about it is the math is common throughout the industry, but it's very specific and customized to your specific community. And so they looked at our assets and our flows and really came up with this cost per unit.
That's great. That's what's nice about those type of models is when you can actually tailor them to your municipality or your city instead of just, well, this is what you got, one size fits all. And that's great that you were able to kind of, this works for us, and T's uses the same principles, but theirs looks a little different, right?
Right, exactly.
So I know changing to the SCCs, people don't always like change, right? We're not going to start this April 2nd, right? And all of a sudden we're doing this completely different system and people are like, well, how do I do it? What do I do that? So I know you guys did a great job of deciding, hey, let's slowly start this and do it slowly over the next 10 years. So talk a little bit about how you're going to go to the SCCs and transition out of the regional wastewater surcharges now.
And I think that's a great success story of this whole project, is just taking that stakeholder feedback and implementing it into a plan that makes a lot of sense for our community. And so, yes, we do have a transition plan. It's a 10-year transition plan. Of course, this was approved earlier this year in April. Our goal is to not have any changes in 2025. We're going to continue to communicate this to our stakeholder groups. And so in 2026, when we start this, people will be really fully educated as much as practical on how this will work. And so there's really two lanes on how this transition will happen. If you're in an existing cost recovery area, in 2026, you're going to pay that full cost recovery amount plus 10% of the regional SCC. In 27, it's the cost recovery fee plus 20%. In 2028, it's the cost recovery fee plus 30%. At the end of 2028, on January 1st, 2029, all the cost recoveries go away and you'll pay 40% of the local, 40% of the regional, and that'll index every year, add 10% every year until we get full implementation in 2036.
That's awesome. You get to rip up that map with all the different colors that have different numbers
gone
everywhere.
On January 1st, 2029. Yes, that'll be gone. The other lane that we'll be in is these new areas that we're starting to grow into that don't have a cost recovery fee associated with them, as well as the core part of our system where we build more sanitary sewer need to accommodate that, and would like to get our ratepayers made whole for that expansion. And so again, in 2025, no change. 26, we'll do 10% of local, 10% of the regional. 27, 2020, 28, 30, 30. And in 2029, both those lanes come together. That's 40% local, 40% regional until we get full implementation in 2036.
So that's awesome that, like I said, that you guys...
2035.
2035?
Pardon, yep.
So that'll be, you're saying January 1st, 2035, it'll be 100% of what our system's going to be going forward from then on.
Yeah. And when you see ordinance, it'll be a little bit more cleaning. It just looked like one bill. So we tried to keep the ordinance as clean as we could too.
Yeah. No, I think that's great how you guys did that, and like I said, slowly implemented and give people kind of idea. One of the other things I think, and maybe talk a little bit about this, typically a developer now, like you said, as soon as you platted, you paid that fee. And now that cost is kind of maybe pushed farther down the process, right? Where they pay the fee basically when you're hooking the meter up to the main line, correct?
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And so the way we used to do business, the cost recovery fee, like you said, at the time of platting, that's when those acres were clearly identified, and they'd have it down to a tenth of an acre. And that was our time to collect the sanitary sewer cost recovery fee. So that was always very, very early in the project, before there's even dirt moved to put foundations in. This is based on the meter size, and so the meter size is related to the potential impact or that need for capacity, and so it's tied to the meter size, and that meter is installed very late in the project, right before you need sanitary sewer service. And so it really is a good thing that it delays that cost to very late in the project until you really need that service. And so that's a nice win as a part of this whole project too.
Yeah, like you just said, that's nice where developers can kind of get the development, the infrastructure and some of the roads and stuff before they have to kind of pay that large fee. And so that'll help quite a bit with us being able to get stuff ready maybe a little faster than what we are doing right now. So that's great. And then I just want to talk a little bit, because we got just a little bit left, but just to give not only your team, but the communications team within our this city of Sioux Falls, just how well you guys have communicated with your stakeholders, the residents of Sioux Falls, the developers with this process. I mean, how long have you been engaging them and working with the Home Builders Association, the Multifamily Association, really trying to educate them on, no, this isn't going to jack up prices for all this stuff. This is what we're doing. Has that been about a 2-year process, or would you say 1-year process?
The study is a very detailed study, and so that RFP or that work actually started in 2021, late 2021, and completed that substantially 2022, early part of 23, and then it was the next steps in implementation. And we developed a team of folks with project management and communications to really take a look at what it would take. And that's where we started our stakeholder engagement. And so it's been about a 2-year process where we were visiting with stakeholders to say, this is where we would like to get, how do we get there, and what makes sense. And so we started with a smaller group and started making refinements. And then in earnest, it would have been late last year, early part of this year, we met with over 30 different stakeholder groups to say, this is what we really would like to get to and the why that we would really like to get to it. And so the success stories have been is that when we started bringing this forward to council information, the impacted groups were fully aware. They really understood the why, and were generally very supportive of this, or understood that this needed to happen, and avoided a lot of conflict in that manner. Matter of fact, at the first reading, we had some concerns that were shared. We were able to follow up with that a couple of different meetings, and just to share the why, and felt comfortable enough to say, I understand the need now, and that was very helpful. In second reading, we had no questions that were of the city council to answer from the public at that time.
No, that's kudos to you guys. I feel like sometimes the planning department does a really good job with engaging stakeholders and having meetings, but this project with you guys has been amazing. Just like I said, to have this big change and to educate people on why it needs to change and why it's good for the change, and then not to have hardly any questions and hardly anybody opposed to it at the city council is kudos to you guys. You just did a really good job, and you guys should give yourself a little pat on the back for that, man.
Well, thank you. It was a team. I cannot emphasize that enough, how many people came together to pull this project together. And so there's a lot of folks to thank in that area. So thank you for that.
It was great. I got one last question for you, okay? Are you going to still be working for the city in 2035 when this thing's fully going to be implemented? This is foreshadowing now, because
I'll be 60 years old in 2035, and so
you can't leave until you're done.
God willing, I will still be here.
Well, thanks for joining us. Really appreciate you coming on the show, Ryan. Haven't ever had a lot of people from Public Works. This is such good information, and like I said, it's been so awesome the way that you guys guys have handled this over 2 years, and to get it to the finish line, April 1st to get that thing through is amazing. So you guys should be proud of yourselves. And thanks for joining us for Planning Preview for the month of May. As always, we allow public comment on any of the items we talked about tonight. And as always, there is that 5-minute comment period at the end of the agenda to talk about anything planning related. Thanks, Sioux Falls, and have a great day.